Well, welcome to our podcast. For lack of a better term, we're going to say this every time. The Dean and Kate podcast until further notified. Mm-hmm. And we are excited to jump into tonight's topic and to visit with everybody. We have loved the feedback that we've gotten on our prior podcast.
Yes,
Thank you, those of you that are chiming back and letting us know what your thoughts and feelings are, as well as those that are liking and sharing and encouraging others to listen. As always, we do want to say and preface everything that we do with, this is our opinions. Mm-hmm. Feel free to disagree. We are not the authorities on every single topic in the world. Our opinions are based upon years and years of experience in the mental health and treatment industry and substance abuse world. So a lot of our thoughts and feelings come from the human side of things, what we've observed and what we've experienced as now in the life coaching world. So again, if you disagree, great. Let us know. We love conversation as long as it's not hostile and rude.
Absolutely. We absolutely love that. In fact, that's kind of what we're talking about tonight.
That's exactly what we're talking about tonight, is dialogue and communication.
Oh, I love it. The other thing that we really lean into in our podcast is to just try to broaden some horizons. So just like Dean just said, even if you don't agree with us, maybe practice listening and just observe what someone else has an opinion of, which is also part of our topic tonight.
Yeah, and I love that, that's what's been so cool about the podcast world and what's so unique and different to me about it. And as Kate has dragged me into this new media world.
You're welcome, America.
I'm very grateful for the fact that people are really branching out and learning more and really wanting to learn more and get a broader understanding of themselves and the world around them. And so this podcast is a new medium for that, and I'm really excited about it.
Yeah.
So as we jump in, one of the things that we were talking about before we started our podcast was this idea of how to be heard and how to express what's in your heart. Mm-hmm. And what I'm proposing and what I'm putting out there again for discussion at the beginning of our podcast, I propose, and as I like to start out with my hypothesis or my proposed conversation of debate, is this idea that there is a right and a wrong way to express yourself to the world. That if you express yourself and it's not in alignment with what the majority thinks, then you're wrong, and people will let you know it, and they will correct you, and they will, turn your cars over.
Yeah,
they will go out of their way to persecute you on social media. They will do whatever they have to do, and if you get it right, then you will be hailed as a hero. And you will be an amazing person. So I propose for discussion that it's important to always agree with what everybody else is saying. I think that's the best thing to do, Kate. I think that your opinion should be the opinion of the general population. And if you disagree with that, you're a bad person. That's what I propose.
All right, so next week on the podcast, just kidding, that was just such a definitive statement.
I know.
That hopefully everyone else's toes curled just as hard as mine did. Like,
it was hard for me to say.
I could tell. I was watching your eyes. I thought it was great. Yeah, and you know what? It's really, really fascinating, this topic of basically, it goes back to that Amendment Right? The right to have speech. And yet here we are in a land that's supposed to have freedom of speech, and part of the counterattack to that is that if you say something we don't like, we will destroy you. So go ahead and say it, but at the expense of what? Your business, your family, your love life, your financial situation, your physical well-being, your name, your reputation, like everything. Yeah, go ahead and say what you want, but everything else is on the line, and we're just going to slaughter you completely if you happen to go against what I like to call the squeaky wheels, right? Like and I just love, I have such a love to hate love the world we live in with the social media and the ability for us to really have information go out quickly and be very accessible by almost everybody, which creates so much cool learning, like stuff like this, and then it creates environments of just so much turmoil and angst and hate when we're talking about this speech business that we're talking about today.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me that, and this the thing I love about this topic is that it's, so running treatment centers, right? Mm-hmm. So kind of dipping back into running residential treatment centers. So I always love the idea of being able to see a small glimpse into the world. Mm-hmm. And so when you take a group of individuals, and this is our sociology, psychology 101 type of thing, right? So you take a group of individuals and you put them in a controlled environment, and during that controlled environment you are going to see social structures develop, you're going to see cultures and subcultures developing, you're going to see all sorts of hierarchies, you're going to have certain popularities and and unpopular type of things going on, and so you get this glimpse into the way we live socially in a very unique way. Even, and I know you've had this experience, even in running groups.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So when you run groups, for those of us in the industry that have sat in a group setting where you'll have anywhere between 8 to 20 to 30 participants, and there is a mentality. I know it's being quoted. I don't like this term because I don't like the beginning word of it, but this mob mentality. Mm-hmm. I don't like the term mob, but for the lack of better terminology at the moment, I'm going to kind of walk with that.
Okay.
And so you get this mass group mentality,
yes,
right? And all of a sudden, the mentality of the group or the mentality of the organization, everybody kind of moves with kind of the ebb and flow of what emotionally is going on inside of that construct. And so when you blow that up, then you get like a national issue.
Yeah.
And you blow that up, now you get a global issue. And it's so intriguing. You can shrink that all the way down to a household of 6.
It's very true.
Right? And it's so funny how in a household of 6, you can have the same exact type of dynamics in a household of 6 that you have on a global level. And it can be majority rules. It can be, go ahead and say what you want to say, but we're going to make your life miserable.
Right.
It's all the same things. It's the same dynamics because we're a part of a family of 6, or we're a part of the human family.
Right.
And so what's so interesting to me, like you said, is like, I love how you put it. It's like, yeah, we'll give you free speech. You go ahead. But then we're going to just tear you up. We're going to make your life a living hell.
Absolutely.
And that's what's so funny to me about it, is because one of the things that I've learned is like when parenting, and I've been there, right? I've been there as a parent. You wind up taking things personal that aren't personal. And I see this a lot with youth, where a family will be predominantly religious. So Catholic, Methodist, Jewish,
Mormon,
LDS, Mormon, like Presbyterian, whatever it is. And so you get these people that are part of these religious sects that are going on, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, Muslim, whatever it is, right? So bear with me, people. But what happens is eventually 1 or 2 of the children in the home want to find a way to have their own independence and their own belief system and their own emotional construct and their own feelings. So then when a child speaks out against that religious construct, then it's that, okay, yeah, you have a right to express how you feel. However, in this house,
right,
this is what we do. Now, take that very same thing and blow it up to nationally. And it's the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah, it's the same thing. You have somebody that speaks out and says, I don't like this. And it's like, yeah, go ahead and say what you're going to say, but we are going to also tell you what you should think, say, and feel. So I'm going back to my original ludicrous proposal, which if you don't agree with the moral majority, you're wrong, and you have to agree with what everybody says, and then you're right. It's really looking at how do we allow people to have a voice and not take it personally.
Yeah, Dean, I would completely agree with you. And bringing it back to that kind of like social media, everyone has such a loud platform these days anyway, as well. And so a lot of times too, it's not just, I love that you brought it to the family, so I'm just going to run with that analogy, right?
Because I've got more I got to throw at you.
I know, but it's not just the child that's like, hey, I don't want to go to church today. I want to try something different, right? They're being loud. And then the whomever on the other end, let's just say dad, okay? Is like, oh no, in my house we're going to church, da 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 da, right? You've got those two oppositional places, and then there's probably people that fall all the way in between the center, right?
Some that are like, yeah, I get where dad's coming from. Yeah, I get where child's coming from.
But they're not being too loud. They just they're just sitting with where it is that they are with the topic.
Right.
However, you've got the two that are just
anchored,
just screaming at each other and just being really, really loud. And once again, we blow that up to the bigger scales, right? And we are seeing that all over the place. I mean, it is an election year in the United States of America right now. So it is just like in our face all the time with a lot of topics at the moment. And what we're hearing are those two emotionally charged polar opposite places and not really getting a lot of the middle ground.
Yeah.
Not hearing that conversation. Yeah. And I think it's because just like what you're saying right now is that a lot of people are just flat out scared to speak up and say what it is that they're thinking and the things that they're trying to understand and gain a greater knowledge of so that they can make good moral compass choices for themselves, right? And how they want to navigate their life. However, the emotional polars are just so loud, and then there's that fear of what will happen to me if I actually speak up and use my voice.
Right. And you wind up struggling because they're drawing lines in the sand. And they're saying, well, if you're not on my team, you're on their team.
Right.
And if you're not with me, you're against me. And so then the people that are in the middle, what I find with most people in the middle in this family setting is like they're sitting there going, well, one of them's like, well, I kind of agree with sibling here, but I kind of agree with dad, and I see both points of view, and I feel like both people are correct. Well, but they're saying if I don't pick them, then I'm against them. Well, wait a minute. What if I'm not for or against either one of them, but I'm actually supportive? Right. And then there's those that are like confused, and there are people in the middle that are like, I don't even know what the heck you're talking about. Like I don't even see this as a problem. It's like, I don't care if we go to church. I don't care if we do go to church. I don't care what the heck we do. Are we having, pie tonight? There you go with the pie.
It always comes back to pie for Dean.
So it's like this middle ground. And, and then the part that bothers me is that then that's where the polar opposites start to shame people for not being on their side. And this is what I'm seeing a lot in our world right now is this social media shaming. And that's where people aren't being heard. Right. This is the problem that I have with it. I'm going to soapbox for a minute.
Please
You'll have to pull me back from the ledge. But people, I'm so tired of this social media shaming. It's like, if you have a point, make your point. Use intelligence. Use truth. Oh, I saw a statistic. They put it on a meme with a person's face and quote that person had said on some talk show. And I'm reading what this person is saying. The person that posted it was reposting it. And I know that everything up there that individual said was not true. It wasn't true what they were saying. But this person, this friend of mine, is posting it as though it's statistically true. Right. And I'm like, no, that's actually false. But everybody's like got their thing where they've got to shame another person with somebody else's statistic,
Right.
with somebody else's opinion, and they're not even doing their research before they do it.
Right. It just fuels that emotional fire instead of actually going after what is true and factual.
And what is really the issue.
Yes.
So now what happens is the minute you play that right or wrong game, because this is what we're talking about essentially, is you're playing a right or wrong game. If you're not with me, you're against me. So now you're so divisive, and that's what the problem is that now it's me versus you, or us versus them, rather than the problem is the problem. Let's solve the problem. And we're not solving the problem. Now all we're doing is picking sides. And we've seen this. This is where the Revolutionary War comes from. This is where we get the civil wars that come from. I'm sorry. Yeah, the Civil War was fought over a really important thing. But most people don't even know what the Civil War was really fought over. And what's funny to me is that part of what we've done is we've made it about the freedoms and the abolishment of slavery in America. But that was only a portion of what the Civil War was actually about. And people aren't researching this information. They're just out there talking about it. But yes, slavery was a part of that. To me, that was important. But I don't think we had to go to war over it. I don't think we had to literally lose the hundreds of thousands of lives that we lost in the Civil War because we couldn't agree on slavery.
Right. We couldn't just get people to sit down at a table and have a conversation about it.
That's right.
And
it was solved.
Yeah.
Like Abraham Lincoln, he solved it. He abolished it. And then we went to war. Well, it wasn't just that we were going to war over people, but we were going to war over these things. And instead of solving the problem, we're taking lives. And I think that's where we've got to get back to the point of, my soapbox piece is social media shaming people. If you're a part of social media shaming, pay attention. Because what you're doing is you're pushing people to a brink. And this is called, before all this stuff started happening, this is, wait for it, because this is crazy, Kate. Before all this craziness was going on in our world, if somebody did that on social media, it was called social media bullying.
Yes.
But isn't it interesting? It's not bullying anymore. Now it's just speaking your truth.
Right.
Now it's just agree with me or you're against me. That's bullying. Now you're bullying people. When you shame, social media shame, that's what it pushes people to take their lives over stuff like that.
And that's exactly what I was thinking when you said, we didn't have to lose so many lives over that. Couldn't we as a country have come together and valued everyone and created, have the same outcome minus all of that loss of life, right? Which for me, it's the same thing. And it may not be death. It may not be, although it is oftentimes people will take their own lives or others will take someone else's life because of what is said via social media and stuff like that. There's also a lot of layers of loss of life, right? People have lost their businesses, they've lost their family, they've been fired. There's lots of things that have come about in an attempt to, quote unquote, speak your truth and use your voice, which once again is something that we here in America really love that one, right? That's one of those, don't take that one away from me.
Right.
However, on the reverse flip side of that coin is the destruction that can happen when it is so emotionally driven and unchecked with just that hate speech is what we're talking about right now.
Right.
That bullying.
The bullying. And that's the part that bothers me about it is that when we get into the shaming part, this is what pushes people to violence. Now, granted, I don't like what happened with this issue in Minnesota. I think, why did we have to wait till it comes this far? Why can't we deal with it
too.
when people are taking a knee, right? Now, I that's a controversial piece, right? But the point being is, why do we even have to be taking a knee? I mean, I'm 55 freaking years old. This shit's been going on as long as I've been alive.
Yeah.
And, it started in the 60s. I grew up in the middle of that. Thankfully, I grew up in sheltered Salt Lake City, Utah, where I didn't see a lot of those types of things going on in my community, but I was raised by two parents that if I ever used the N-word, if I ever mistreated another human being due to gender, race, or religious belief system, my parents would have immediately corrected me. So I grew up with good parenting as well around that venue. And as a consequence, I try to do my best to do the same for my children. But the point being is that here we are. And I'm 55, and here we are years later, and it shouldn't have to take somebody taking a knee in the middle of a football game, not beginning of a football game, to get us talking about it. It shouldn't take loss of life to be talking about it.
Right.
And when the system is stacked to give us, you and me, as we know it, white privilege is what the terminology, which I'm not comfortable with the terminology white privilege, because I think that it doesn't really put a finger on what the issue is. It's not a matter of white privilege being the best way to describe it. If we really described it as what it is advantages that you have. I don't have to worry when I get pulled over by a police officer that I'm going to get profiled. I don't even have to worry that I'm going to get pulled over, especially a 55-year-old man. Like, I'm not going to get pulled over just because. But when my friends that I have that are about my age and they're African American, they'll get profiled. They'll get pulled over. That bothers me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that to me is the privilege I have. That's what is deemed as white privilege. You can call it white privilege. You can call it whatever you want to call it, Black Lives Matter, whatever it is. But to me, it's a stacked system.
Yes.
And that's what we're being asked to dismantle, people. Well, let's dismantle that. Let's stop dismantling each other.
Right?
Right?
Yes.
Stop dismantling each other. Stop the madness of shaming, media shaming. Stop the madness of tipping over cars. Let's link arms and dismantle a system that isn't working anymore.
Yes, and I love how
never worked,
right? And I love how you said, like, let's talk about it, right? And that's the difference. That's exactly what we're having this conversation about. Like, yes, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about it. Let's not shout about it. Let's not speak all sorts of nasty things about it. Like, let's get together and have a conversation. One where both sides are seeking to understand and come up with a really amazing solution. Because, oh gosh, okay, my soapbox time.
Here it comes.
So, I have a lot of friends who are quite political, and I think that's great. They love to get involved. They love to research. They love to understand what's going on, who's on what side of what topic. It helps me because I, quite frankly, stay away from that kind of stuff. So it keeps me educated enough that I can be able to go into the poll on election day and feel like I know a little bit about what's going on, but I choose not to really include myself in those kind of circles because of what we're talking about right now, because it can get so not, hey, let's search for the best solution here as a country. It just gets me versus you, us versus them, right? The two opposing forces. However, I am of the opinion that the structure was built and put into place for a checks and balance system, right? So that we can have opposing views come to a table and bring their strengths from both sides and their perspective and their weaknesses as well. And in the middle is where we can find solid, beautiful, working solutions. Right? It's not like only the Republican agenda or only the Democrat agenda. Like let's bring everybody together and create conversation where we're seeking to understand situations and issues and all of that. But we can't even create that sort of environment because it's so just, you're wrong, I'm right, battle.
Pick sides.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, and to kind of bring that back in. And you're right. You're not going to get blown up on this one because the reality is that's the way the system was originally created.
Right.
Unfortunately, at that time, all of the things that were going on in the world across the globe by the way. So it wasn't just an American issue. It was a global issue of slavery.
Right.
And there is still slavery going on in the world today. There are sex slaves, there's human trafficking.
Yes.
So we're not even addressing that issue yet, which is mind-blowing to me. So yes, so what was going on at the time while these things were going on in 1700s, there was a lot of slavery. The slavery was what was driving, the South and driving a lot of the things that were going on with the tobacco trade, the cotton trade, etc., that were going on in our world. And it's not okay. It wasn't okay then, and people were fighting against it back then. It's not okay now, and people are fighting against the sex trade and human trafficking trade now. So we know that it's not okay, but you're correct. The system was set up where both parties are a check and balance. The Republican side of things, the Democratic side of things, the independent side of things, and the different parties that we supposedly should have in country, which we only have two now, which is we used to have multiple parties, but that was the system. And that's where, we were able to do it. And a little tidbit, which you may not know, is that back originally in the presidency, our original presidency was two people ran for president, one from the other. The winner became the president, the loser became the vice president.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
To me, we need to get back to that. That would be phenomenal for solving this problem, but we got away from that, unfortunately. So study your politics, people. Open a book, read a bok. Don't read social media and think that you're getting the facts. Right.
Well, and that brings in a whole nother kind of hairy situation here, is that in the complete saturation environment that is social media, that is even, news media. I mean, we can just throw it out there on all those platforms, is that oftentimes people are getting information and putting it as a viable, credible source from people who are just like me and you, Dean, that are just talking about my opinion. I'm just talking about my opinion, right?
Yeah.
And
that last part was a fact, but the rest is opinion.
Yeah, we can throw in real facts
here,
throw
some
right?
Facts, yeah.
Yeah. But that is also something that just really ignites that emotional, passionate polarity that happens, because oftentimes people aren't even getting real, honest, raw, accurate information. It's completely skewed. I was talking to my sister about this the other day, there's been all sorts of stuff that have come out all over the place as far as is George Floyd even dead? I don't know. Here's this picture of him at his own funeral, all this stuff. And it's crazy how I know. Well, but in our world of technology, you can literally create anything and present it as true.
That is
and
ridiculous.
Fact. It is completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
However, it's very deceptive, right?
Yeah.
And so you get people that share that information, and it's the conspiracy theory mojo. It's how it even lives, right? Yeah. And so not only do we have a world right now where it's very difficult to find out what is actually true, because it can be so easily manipulated, but then also everyone's got their own ginormous opinion tacked on from people who just have ginormous opinions that don't really even know what the heck they're talking about.
Right.
They're just sharing from their emotional stance instead of bringing it into bringing that balance of logic and truth and what is actually fact.
Right. And I think that's the part too where we get back, kind of going back to our example of the family, boiling it down in that little microcosm of the family that we're talking about. And, we get the child on one side rebelling, and we get the parent on the other side pounding the fist of authority, and this is what's going to be. And then we have everybody kind of the spectrum in between, trying to figure out how to share what they think and feel. And the problem is that if they disagree, then they get ostracized, they get beat up, or they get, whatever it is, verbally, emotionally. I mean, even social media shaming, like you'll get the dad that's saying, or mom, this is the way it's going to be. And then the child, his son or daughter, blowing them up on Facebook or on Instagram, my dad's such a, whatever. It's the same thing. So then what happens is that when the people in the middle watch what's being done to the protagonist and the antagonist, then they're stepping there going, well, crap, I don't want to speak up because I don't want to go through that myself. Mm-hmm. And so now you've got all these solution solvers in the middle that are petrified because the two extreme people are hitting each other, over the head. And they're like, well, I'm going to keep my mouth shut, let these guys work it out, and then I'm going to just deal with whatever, comes out on the other end. And I think what needs to happen is the middle has to be given a voice.
Yes. And
the only way to give it is we have to step away from this right or wrong game. We've got to step away from you're wrong, we're right game that people are playing. We've got to start getting, problem focused, solution seeking focused, because we're not solution seeking focused in our country right now. We are blame focused, and that's the other area that I want to go. And so as we kind of go along our little timestamp, I really want to talk about how we here in America especially, but in the world in general, we love victims and we hate perpetrators, and we work so hard to create this victim-perpetrator world. Because if you can get a martyr, because the world loves a martyr, if you can get a martyr, you can rally behind them. If you can get a perpetrator, you can crucify them.
Yes.
And you can turn anybody into a martyr, and you can turn anybody into a perpetrator. And I've seen that. I've seen the world turn on a dime. Like, I think about this guy back during 1996 during the Atlanta Olympics, if you remember, Mr. Jewell, who was the security guard who found the bomb before it went off. There was a bombing or a bomb that was going to go off during the Olympics, a terrorist attack. And Richard Jewell found the bomb. And at first, he was the hero. Everybody loved him. Everybody thought he was the most amazing person in the world. And Clint Eastwood just made a Netflix series about him. And it was so crazy to me to watch as he was this hero. Everybody touted him. Everybody loved him because he literally saved lives.
Right.
And next thing you know, the media turned on him. And the media started spreading little doubts here and there about him. And law enforcement started spreading things about him. And next thing you know, he started getting blamed. They started saying he was the one that planted it. He was the one that put it out there, and he was the bomber.
Wow.
That he was trying to get attention and do all these things. So he went from this hero to this villain, and he was literally like death threats. Like it was his life got turned upside down.
Completely destroyed.
And the media blew it up. I'm not kidding you, Kate. I remember, like, that's all I remember was how this guy had done this. But what they didn't show, and this is the part that Clint Eastwood made the movie about, which to me is relevant to this discussion, is that what they didn't show is when he was acquitted. When they found that he had no way, he had alibi, he had all sorts of stuff that really proved that he had absolutely 100% nothing to do with it at all.
But that got zero media coverage.
Media didn't present that at all. The media never came back and apologized to him. The police department never apologized to him. He didn't get any. He didn't get it. And to this day, to my knowledge, I cannot remember what happened at the end. But I do know that his life was turned upside down over this thing. And so I've seen this happen in our world where we can take people and we can turn them into the hero, or we can turn them into the loser on a dime. And to me, it's very, very discouraging because I'm seeing it with all sorts of things that are going on in our world today. And the view that we have, I love the idea that it's 2020. And we're talking this 2020 It's been the theme. Hindsight is 2020.
Right. Vision,
mm-hmm. all these things, and yet this is the year that we are in the most confused and lost we've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
We've ever been. The coronavirus comes through, and we've got so much stuff coming at us. We don't even know.
Yeah.
Like you walk into a store and you don't have a mask on and you get shamed because you're not wearing a mask, but we're being told, hey, it's not helpful. You shouldn't need to wear a mask unless you're sick.
Yeah.
Don't wear. And then all of a sudden, no, you should always wear a mask. It's like, well, what the hell?
Right?
Which one am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
Now we're seeing this information that now they're putting out information that the coronavirus stays airborne.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like it's airborne now and it's floating around. So wait a minute. You told us a little while ago that it was only on surfaces, that you could only get it one way. Now we're getting another piece of information. Now, I guarantee you, in a year or 15 months or 3 months, 4 months, 2 months, we're going to be told something different, that it's translated via osmosis and mind control. Who knows?
Right.
But the point being is that we've got this craziness going on with Corona. We've got the craziness going on with this Floyd issue, the Black Lives Matter. We got all this turmoil, and yet we can't see clearly that we're not focusing on the problem.
Right.
That's my point.
Yeah.
We've got so much static that we can't see. It's the year 2020, clarity, vision, and we can't even see people. You're not even looking at the problem.
Nope.
You're chasing your tail. You're screaming, pounding, yelling, threatening, bullying, shaming, and we still don't have a solution.
Right. And really, like we're talking about, the solutions probably can be found in those middle places where people are just too terrified to actually use their voice. They don't feel like
they're heard.
That they're heard, exactly. Or that they will be listened to, right? They'll just, like, if they begin to speak, then no one's even going to be listening to what they're actually saying. They're going to immediately assume, put you on the right or the left or wherever we're going to go, right? And then watch out because the hurricane is coming at that point.
Then you're going to get attacked.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me too. Like, I know I'm doing a lot here, so jump in and cut me off if you need to. But I remember after the, and I think I've talked about this before, I don't remember, but I remember after the last election and Donald Trump won the presidency. And there was this little gal at the gym that, up until that point, she was very friendly, kind. We were not inappropriate. It was just friendly.
Sure, yeah.
We were just
would say hi and chat with you at the gym.
And we would talk, and she had asked some tips and help with family, with her family and stuff. And so I talked to her. She knew what I did, and so it was intriguing to me because the day after the election, I show up at the gym. And this very friendly young woman who very liberal, very, very, pro-life, very pro, all these things, which I have no problem with. You know me.
Yeah.
I love people, right?
Yep.
She walks up to me and she says, I hope you're proud of yourself. I'm like, oh, crap. I'm like,
what?
Shit, what did I do?
Yeah.
I mean, did I forget to, wipe down the machine after I left? What the hell did I do wrong?
Uh-huh.
And she commences to shame me right there, loudly, in the middle of the gym. She's just going off. Like, I hope you're proud of yourself. Now people are going to this. People are going to die. The world's going to be crazy. There are going to be Nazis running everywhere. There's going to be all this stuff. And just unloading on me. I'm looking around. People are looking at me. And she's just giving me an earful. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm trying to understand. I don't even understand. What are you saying? She's like, well, you voted for Trump, didn't you? And I looked right at her and I said, what makes you think I voted for Donald Trump? And she just stopped and looked at me and she's like, well, you're not going to tell me you didn't. No, people, I will tell you on this podcast, I did not vote for Donald Trump. I voted for the other dude. I can't even remember his name at the moment.
Right.
Well, we'll have to search it. Hold on, I'm going to search it. Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on, let me search. David McMullen. That's who I voted for. I voted for David McMullen. I wasn't going to vote for either side. I'm an independent. I'm a middle-of-the-road guy. I'm a middle voicer. And so I looked at her. I said, no, I did not vote for him. And she's like, well, who did you vote for? I said, you know what? It's none of your business who I voted for, but just know that I didn't vote for him. And then she turned. I will tell you, she will not talk to me to this day.
Wow.
And that's how many years later.
Yeah.
She'll wave to me now.
We're coming up on 4.
We're at least friendly again.
Yeah.
But how many times do we assume because the way a person looks, who they are, et cetera, and then we shame that person? Well, of course nobody's going to use their voice.
Right.
Like if I was a really insecure person at that moment, I don't know what I would have done. But fortunately, I'm a pretty confident person and comfortable with who I am that I'm not letting that bother me. Obviously, it bothers me to some degree, or I wouldn't be talking about it if I'm transparent.
Well, it's just that it's that humanity piece, right?
Yeah.
Like the fact that she would just come after you like that. That's what bothers you. It's not necessarily her, or the situation. It's like, oh gosh, this is a piece to our puzzle as humans that we need to figure out.
This is a part of the problem, is that we assume that people are on certain sides, and that's not okay because we shouldn't have any sides. We should have a solution-seeking culture.
Jinx, 135 owe me Dr. Pepper.
Dr. Pepper.
I couldn't agree with you more. And that's such a really good, perfect example, actually, of how that happens and can go down. And I'm over here just thinking, even if you had voted for Donald Trump, right? Like, for her to be coming at you with that kind of agenda to just destroy you is the problem again, right? Instead of approaching you and saying, hey, and maybe offering you some facts or whatever it is, like to try to come to some sort of logical place to have a conversation about it instead of just rolling into all of the insanity that we're just constantly swimming in right now when it comes to speech.
And I think this is where the third piece that I want to add in before we am looking at the time. One of the third piece I want to add in, which is why do we allow social media and celebrities to tell us how to think and feel? This has always been one of my big issues is these are actors, right? So these are actors and these are athletes that we are paying to perform the way we want them to perform. So we're paying them to be who we want them to be. Let's be honest.
Yeah, to entertain us.
You get a football star, a quarterback. If we weren't paying him to play football, he wouldn't be playing football, right? Nobody's going to... If we stop playing for football, the NFL, if we stop funding the NFL, which is what we're doing essentially, America, if we weren't funding the NFL, then nobody's going to play for the NFL, right? Who's going to do that? If you were funding like the education system, which I believe you should be doing, I personally believe, and if I ever ran for president, which I wish I could someday, I guarantee you my platform would be better education and putting the amount of money we put into the NFL into our education system, right? But we don't. So we're paying this person to be who we want them to be, essentially. We're paying them. You be who I want you to be. I want you to be a football star. I'm going to pay you to be that person.
Right.
We take an actor, anybody from from the movies, from the Avengers. Take any of those actors. We're paying them to pretend.
Right.
We're paying them to dress up in a costume and be somebody we want them to be, so that we can live vicariously through them. So these are people that are getting paid by us to pretend or to be something we want them to be. And then they're telling us how to think.
How to think and feel.
They're telling us how to be us.
Right.
Right? So I've got this actor who's dressing up as a father on the screen or an actor on the screen who is pretending to be a person who's pretending to be me, essentially. And then they're turning around and trying to give me parental advice. I mean, that's nuts. But yeah, we do it every day. And I think it's upside down. This is part of that mind F we talk about, is we're allowing this when we're allowing the theater, we're the Colosseum, I'd like to call it. The Roman Colosseum is what we're living now. MMA, NFL, action movies, Hollywood. All of it, Hollywood. It's the Colosseum. It's like Rome back in the day of the Colosseum, back in the day of the emperors, right as we got to the end where, Marcus Aurelius being the last great emperor and everything started to deteriorate around the Colosseum. I think we're there. Our culture's de-evolving into this, whatever the Colosseum is telling us is the best. And whatever the Colosseum is telling us, it's okay to murder people. It's okay to put people in the middle of a Colosseum and have them slaughter each other. Why not? It's entertainment.
Yeah, come watch.
Come watch. And then when it's playing
Buy your ticket. That's what it actually is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they're turning around and telling us how to think and feel, but yet they're the ones that are promoting this idea of violence, sex, all these things. They're the ones promoting it. But yet then they're turning around and telling you, here's your morals.
Right.
Soapbox over.
Well, and I think the next stage of that is that awesome. They should obviously be able to exercise their freedom of speech. However, where it gets muddy is when people just think that what they have to say is the gospel truth. End of story. Done. Tom Hanks said it. It must be right. Right?
It must be the truth.
Even though, Tom is just a mortal man just like you.
It's just an opinion.
It's just his perspective and his viewpoint.
Yep.
And the next layer of that is, and we've talked about this, I think, I know we have on a number of Monday Night Lives. I don't know if we've gotten to this in the podcast yet, but it's really difficult when you have that culture and that environment because they're just trying to sell you a product. It comes back to the ticket. Like I said, when you were talking about the Colosseum, come on in, buy a ticket, and then I'm gonna proceed to work you like a puppet and show you what it is that you want to see.
Yeah.
Which that's exactly what it's difficult to find a news organization that isn't operating that way. That's actually going to give us clear, accurate, correct information.
Right.
That has no agenda, that has no skewed view, that isn't trying to sell you something or get you to think a certain way so that you'll vote a certain way or take something to somebody,
And this is my one of my biggest issues with it is we have become so emotionally aroused as a society. Like we are so overly stimulated. Like everywhere we are overly sexually stimulated. We're overly violently stimulated. We are extreme emotion stimulated to the point where that's what we need. And the media and Hollywood and all of these sports, all of these are driven by heightened emotional states, right? So, but we're in the Colosseum.
Yep.
So my point being is we're whipped into this frenzy and we want this emotional extreme. And here's what I'm proposing is that the reason that the media doesn't want you to focus on the problem is because solving the problem takes the emotional frenzy away.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
100%.
So if we solve the problem, we take the emotional frenzy. And if we take the emotional frenzy, then you're not going to click on me.
Right.
You're not going to follow me.
Yes.
You're not going to watch me. You're not going to pay to come see me if we remove the emotional frenzy. Because nobody wants to be just vanilla. But if we start solving problems, we become vanilla.
Right. Heaven forbid we actually create solutions that will make life and our relationships and everything else a lot more peaceful.
It's driving me crazy.
It's wild.
It's driving me crazy. And that's where we always talk about solutions. Really, people, we got to get back to our solutions. We've got to get back to our mindfulness. We've got to get back to our meditation. We've got to get back to this place where we can calm ourselves, listen to our discerning voice, and make decisions from there.
Right.
We've got to learn to love ourselves so we can love everybody around us for who they are. I don't care what your gender. I don't care what your gender preference. I don't care the color of your skin. I don't care your political preference. I don't care. You are important. You are loved. You are valuable. If I have a different opinion than you, that doesn't mean I don't love you.
Absolutely. That's okay.
Because I don't agree with your lifestyle choices in the sense that I don't want to live them.
Right. It's not something you would choose.
It doesn't mean that I'm saying that because I disagree with your lifestyle choice because I don't live it doesn't mean that you shouldn't. Mm-hmm. I don't care. Live it. As long as you're not hurting another person, hurting yourself, or hurting the society around you, do it.
Right.
But the minute you start hurting yourself, hurting others, and hurting society, now I take issue. Mm-hmm. But, man, just because I don't agree with you, that's the hard part, right?
Right. It's just that's another piece to it is everyone personalizes everything so extremely instead of just looking at the problem and coming up with a solution or allowing somebody to have their own opinion. Heaven forbid we just allow someone to have their own stance without completely destroying them if it's different than our own.
You.
Right? It is totally that way. And I love that you brought in right here at the tail end that is exactly what we need to get back to not take things from such an emotionally heightened state, to bring it down, let it rest and breathe right inside of us. I'm talking about this is what I always try to do, right? Like you get some information or you feel that like emotion start to come up. Exactly. Like whichever direction it goes, but the truth resides when you've got what's logical and true, and then you feel with your heart to be able to know how to compass off of that information. And that's how I choose to roll freaking every election.
Right. Yeah. When it
or
comes
every issue that comes up. Or
election time, like right now, like, you know, in full transparency, I can't figure out who to vote for.
I don't even know everybody running, to be completely honest with you. It's
I don't think
too
anybody
beginning
knows
right now, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anybody knows, but I think it's too soon to be planting a flag. Mm-hmm. I think we've got a lot of people that need to start to speak up. I think we need to get candidates and support people that aren't going to be driven by the media,
yes,
aren't going to be driven by an agenda, but are actually, in my opinion, if you're listening to this podcast, you need to be looking for solution-seeking people. Stop looking for voting one way or the other because they are opposed to the person you don't like. That's what I don't like.
Right.
Okay, well, you don't like Donald Trump, so I'll vote for anybody but him. That's like the most asinine thing I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, my goodness.
Like, okay, so you're going to just go from one crazy person to another crazy person?
Right.
I mean, that makes no sense. So what needs to happen is those of you that are listening that are just really enraged by what's going on, run for office.
I love it.
Enter
Please.
the campaign.
Yes.
Find a way to solve problems. Don't just sit there and scream, right?
Right.
We've got to start to solve problems, people. You know, if I had the financial ability, I'd run.
I'd vote for you, Dean.
I don't have the financial ability.
I'll be your VP. How about that?
I would love that. But we got to get to a point where we start this solution seeking right now. And we can't get caught up in the political swaying of what is popular.
Right.
And that's what we're not hearing, is that there are solution seekers out there. And this is the point I want to wrap up with as we get to the end, is there are solution seekers out there, people, but the people shouting on both ends of the spectrum are so loud that you can't hear them. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You've got the one people, you know, one side of the platform that are screaming, pounding, yelling, you know, looting, flipping cars, burning things, you know, and nobody can hear. Nobody can hear what you're saying because your actions are so loud. You have the other side that can't stop tweeting. Please stop tweeting. Stop throwing gas and matches into the world, right? And it's so loud we can't hear. But where's the solution seekers? Where's the people with the answers? I can't find them.
Right.
And that's my biggest frustration right now, is I can't see anybody out there with the answers. I want to follow you.
Right, me too.
Listener, if you're out there and you got the answer, I will follow you. But you screaming, you tweeting, I'm not going to listen.
Yeah, because it's just noise.
Yeah.
It's not productive.
Right. You know, and that's the thing. I just don't understand. But I do understand. Well, thank you, dear listener, for tuning into our podcast. Again, these are our opinions. It doesn't mean we're correct. There are some facts in there, however. My hope is that you will open a book and that you will not use Wikipedia or social media as your main source of information in making decisions.
Yes. And my hope is that you'll also really use your brain and your heart and not just allow your emotional wave of tides to be directing you to be able to find out what is actually true.
Yeah.
And I love, Dean, how you made a call to action. So if you are a solution seeking person, we need more of you.
Call me.
Please.
I will follow
Don't
you.
be afraid to use your voice.
Yep. I will follow you.
Have a wonderful week.